Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. I'm excited for my next guest today, who I've known for quite a long time. But as I say every week, today's podcast is brought to you by Nova Insurance, where we love people through insurance, whether that is your business, real estate portfolio, home, auto, or life. We work as an independent risk advisors to find the best coverage and options for your unique needs. So give us a shout, 859-687-2004. Today's guest, like I said, I've known for many, many years. Ironically, was my first boss, actually, when I graduated high school and was looking for a job, and we'll kind of get into that later. But married to his beautiful bride, Lori, and they have Brett and Aaron are their two kids. He graduated from Angelo State University, but has been in the Lexington area. I think he would call that home now for sure, as he's lived 21 places over his lifetime. But it definitely, he's been here for 20 years, I think, at this point almost. But I'm pleased to welcome Roderick Long to the Keys of the Commonwealth studio. Roderick, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, yeah, you were, I don't know if you knew that, but you were my first boss. Way back in the day, not to make you feel old, but out of high school.
I don't know if that's good for you or bad for you.
No, it's good. It was,
okay.
Honestly, so Roderick owns real estate, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But obviously, you owned two of the Chick-fil-A's, or I guess I don't know if operator. That's a different business scheme as far as the way that's I know. But operator of two of the Chick-fil-A's in town. Been here in the Lexington area for I guess probably 20 years now.
Right.
Almost.
Yeah.
Long time. My kids were pretty much raised here and everything like
Crazy.
that. Yeah. But I always go back to those Chick-fil-A days as like the value that I learned as far as just working with people, a customer first mindset. Of course, then I went to banking after that, which is where the customer is always wrong unless they're proven right.
Right.
So I kind of balanced it a little bit in that sense.
Yeah. Good job.
But yeah, I always harken back to those Chick-fil-A days as far as how important those were in developing, a business mindset where a teamwork, working together, some of my leadership skills, and obviously love working under you.
Yep, thanks.
So as we start every episode out, though, we're not here to talk about Chick-fil-A in that sense. But as far as real estate goes, hop back in the DeLorean and tell us, talk to me a little bit. How'd you get into that world, or what led you down that path?
Yeah, so I've always been entrepreneurial ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And my dad was a missionary, and so we grew up a lot, and I grew up both here in the States and in Costa Rica, and then in Medellin, Colombia, during the 80s. Oh. So it was in 85. Yeah, so if you've watched Narcos on Netflix or whatever, that was the time and the area that I grew up in. So that was kind of interesting, but all of that built into my entrepreneurial spirit, if you will. And then my dad grew up in a long line of contractors, and so he started his life as a builder. So he did a lot of construction work with Mission. So I always grew up on a job site of some form or fashion. And when I finally got into business of my own and had some margin in life and was looking, what do I want to do to set up my future or to build wealth. Real estate was kind of the natural venture. Mm-hmm. One is I love the hunt, right? And so that was always the first part of the real estate deal, was just finding the right place.
A lot easier back then, probably, though.
It's getting harder. And then I loved renovating. I love the fact that you can go in and do something to completion and step back and look at it. And in our business, as you know, that doesn't ever happen. It's a perpetual motion machine, and you never really step back and finish. And so real estate allowed me to do that. And so it combined a few different passions, and I've been involved with it now for a number of years, and made some successes, some mistakes, learned from them, and that's why we're here today.
Speaking of the successes and passions as far as those goes, I don't know if you ever remember this. Like I have a bad memory as far as remembering details of a lot of things. But one of those things that I always remembered that I never forgot was me and you were sitting down one day at Chick-fil-A. So I was probably freshman in college, and you did the whole diagram with the 3 circles. I don't even remember which of the 3. You could probably tell and maybe speak to those 3 circles, but I just remember obviously they cross, and all 3 circles cross in the center, and that was, you know, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what you can make money at. Was that the 3 circles?
Yeah, that's it. That's the 3.
And finding something along those lines. I think I went in some different directions. Thought I was going to be music for a little bit. Yeah. Realized I had a passion for it, was good at it, but I couldn't make money at it in that sense, you know. And never imagined I would be in the world of insurance and in real estate. But that's those kind of went hand in hand. I never saw those coming together in that sense either. That one led to the other. So I've like finally realized, I was like, I think I'm in that inner circle part of that now. In that sense.
I never thought I'd make a living selling chicken sandwiches, and
because you were in grocery before that.
Yeah, so in Texas, right? I started my life in the Air Force, and after high school, couldn't pay for college. Back to my parents were missionaries. And so I didn't have any money, and I didn't really like high school.
Yeah.
I was one of those, you know, probably a 2.8 GPA students, thought high school was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Every day I just looked forward to getting out of school so I could go to work. And so that was, you know, and so then at 18, they're like, hey, do you want to go to college? And I was like, I couldn't think of anything worse to do with my life than go stay in school. So I was like, no. And but, you know, I had to make my parents happy. So I said, well, here's the deal. I'll go into the Air Force because they'll pay for my college. And so I'll go to school, but I don't want to go to school now.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went to the Air Force and got on the GI Bill. Took me till about I was 21, you know, and then I kind of figured life out. And I was like, you know what? I think I do want to go to school. And so I did. And once I did, I did really well in it, you know, because I was interested. I saw value in it, so I paid attention. So that worked out. So I wound up in San Angelo, Texas, where my wife was from, and went to a small school there, Angelo State, which is now part of Texas Tech. And I got my business degree. And
where is that near?
Nowhere. You know, if you go to nowhere and turn left, that's where San Angelo is. Okay. It's about 6 hours west of Dallas.
Okay.
South of
Amarillo?
South of that by about 3 hours.
Oh, gosh, so really?
It's out, yeah.
Just out there.
It's just out in the middle of nowhere.
That's crazy.
But beautiful, beautiful town, beautiful people.
Yeah.
And loved it. I was there for about 12 years before moving here to you know, get into the chicken business. So.
And that has paid dividends for sure.
It's done better than I ever expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with my insurance job, but I think we're both obviously unique and similar in that sense of like, had other businesses, but then saw the aspect of like, how do I perpetuate, you know, what I'm making or where to put my money in that sense. Especially you were ahead of the curve, but you know, especially with me, I don't want to put all my chickens in one basket or eggs in one basket. Right. Pun intended with the chicken guy here. Yeah. But you know, so I was like wanting to diversify, and obviously real estate was that natural path. Found the Bigger Pockets podcast, which I know we've talked about a little bit, and was like, you know what, I don't know anything about it, but obviously there's a lot of people in Kentucky who are very willing to share their story or come alongside you or give you tips or ask if you got questions, answer those questions, which has been why I started the podcast to begin with, to kind of share it with other people, maybe give them the bravery to go step out on their own and do that in this sense. So back to like as far as the, you know, investing in real estate and so forth. I mean, what was do you remember your first one? Everyone remembers their first one.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I bought a duplex in Nicholasville that had been foreclosed on, and the bank was selling it.
Nice.
Yeah, and I paid $116,000 for it, and this would have been probably in 2009. So it was right after the crash. Yeah. Toxic assets everywhere. You know, banks were, you know, inheriting or getting back lots of properties. They were just trying to get rid of them as fast as possible. And you know, bought a duplex and made all the mistakes with it. The one mistake I didn't make was what I bought it for. It turned out that was pretty good. But you know, I decided I was going to self-manage it. You know, which you know was an experience, and you know, learned how many coats of paint it takes to paint over hot pink wall paint, because I told the tenant that she could decorate her kid's room. And that was a mistake. And she promised me that she would paint it back before she left, like they all do.
Well, they always
they don't.
No.
And so, you know, it took me like 3 days to cover hot pink paint, and and made a number of other mistakes. But they're just things you learn along the way.
I was going to say, what as far as the mistakes go, what are one of the ones outside of that stick out to you? Is it just as owning multiple businesses, or just trying to self-manage it type of a thing? Was that probably the thing you most quickly realized you needed to change?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the things, especially in the business that we'd come from, grace was a big part of how we operated our business. And so, trying to balance how much grace do you extend to a renter, to a tenant. And then, coming to realize that, I thought I was extending grace. What was happening was I was just being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so finding that line, between working with people and trying to help people, and then just having people lie to you and take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And I think it all came to a head when I had a renter that refused to pay their utility bills, and so they had their power cut off, and they had their cousin go out and actually hotwire the electric meter on the house. And then I got a call from the utility company pretty much threatening, legal action because I own the property.
Right.
And in dealing with that kind of stuff,
the things you never think of ever. You never crossed your mind that would happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then in that aspect of like extending grace, like obviously my agency, we try to love people through insurance, and Chick-fil-A, it's like, okay, is the order wrong? Even if it's not wrong, it's not much to like just fix the problem in that self to create a good experience. But you're right. There's a difference in other fields where I try to love people through insurance, but I can't do that in some respects as far as just paying people money for claims that don't exist, or having them, they'll try to lie and, tell you they don't have a pit bull or something like that.
Right.
And so forth. Or again, the tenant side of things, trying to meet them and have a relationship with them. That's one of the big themes we've seen, is definitely, but obviously that's a little bit different from the, having a hired, management company type of thing.
Right.
Because sometimes I know I couldn't give that level of service in that relationship, just having my other job here, obviously, and so forth. But having a guy, my business partner, who is our dedicated manager in that sense, that can go much further versus like, I think you've had a good experience, I think, with the property management group.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allows you to scale. Right. Mm-hmm. So I could never
doing what you're better at versus not.
Yeah, I could never have the size of the portfolio that we have if I was self managing them. It's just time.
Yeah.
And so having a company that has assets, and connections and relationships and property management companies can be a nightmare if you have the wrong one. Mm-hmm. Right. You hear all the nightmare stories of how owners think that they're being taken advantage of by their management company or by maintenance fees or by charges or whatever the case may be. But once you find a really good one and you develop a relationship with them, and, in this case, it's local, so I can, on a periodic basis, I can walk into the office and we can sit down and we can go over the different properties and we can go over things that we're dealing with, and I can text the people involved and get answers, quickly to things. And so if you have that and there's some trust and they understand that, that you're, that they deal with owners that just refuse to put any money into their places whatsoever. One story, they were dealing with an owner, they were trying to rent a place and they were trying to rent it at the top of the market. And it was a single family home, I think 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And the upstairs carpet had a stain in it that was like 6 feet in diameter. I mean, it was just this huge stain.
Okay.
And so the property management company, notified the owner and said, "Hey, listen, we're going to keep the deposit, obviously, of the last renter, but we're going to have to replace the carpet." And it was an absentee owner, and she was adamant that they were not going to do that. We're not spending any money on this place, and we're not going to replace the carpet, and they can just put a rug over it or whatever, and at that point, the property management company actually walked away from that owner. They didn't have any interest in managing, for somebody that wasn't going to provide a decent place to live. And
to that point about decent place to live, I mean, that's what we're in the business of in that sense. And if you lose sight of that, then you've gone flip the needle the other way from the grace aspect, and it's just a money mind only scenario, and haven't realized you're still in the people business in that sense.
Yeah.
Obviously the market's changed a lot today. I mean, so what's your current portfolio look like? I mean, it's mostly, I think, single family and duplex kind of scenarios.
Yeah, duplex is the biggest multi-unit we have. We don't have any triplexes. I wish I did, just can't find them.
Yeah.
Quads, no quads. So yeah, everything's single family. Townhouses probably make up the majority of our portfolio, just because that seems to be what there's a lot of around here. And then some duplexes. So we're about to close a deal probably in the next couple of weeks on a pair of duplexes together. Bought them as a package.
Nice.
And I think that puts us at 56 doors. So.
Wow. I know you get to split that between two. What was the decision in that sense as far as an investor? When I know they're between two different companies at this point as far as entities, LLCs. What was the kind of the factor of that? Was it?
Yeah, I guess
splitting up between different entities. I guess because some people are like, I'm going to create an entity for every single property. I've got investors like that versus others.
Yeah, so I have an accounting company that I work with, and I think he would absolutely kill me if I tried to create an LLC for every property. Right. But we did want to diversify the asset risk, and so we decided to go into two and split them. I know some people that put everything into one.
Yeah.
I know some people that have a different one for every property. That's in my opinion, probably significant amount of overkill. But we just split them in. We just split them in half. And will we launch a third someday? Maybe. But
same thing with insurance for me. A lot of times we'll put them together, but there's a certain point where usually I start splitting policies apart just to kind of diversify that risk as far as the overall limits of the policy and so forth, in different ways like that. Even if it's the same business, so. Not having all your eggs in one basket still applies sometimes, obviously, in owning property or businesses for sure in that sense. So, especially in this market, I know it's harder and harder to get those. So I've been impressed with how you've been able to still get them. I know I've got a few here, but it's if anybody knows of anybody, you know where to reach me or Roderick, I'm sure, to sell us something if you want to.
Yeah, I think the last 25 or 26 that we've bought have all been off market.
Yeah.
I don't think we've bought anything off MLS in a really, really long time.
And that's the thing with like real estate investors. Getting to know other real estate investors a lot of times is a great thing too. Mm-hmm. You think like everybody's, we're all competing in some respects, which I guess you could say that, but at the same time, there also could be your closest friend and ally if they want to start selling off smaller properties in order to kind of roll those into bigger, apartment complexes or commercial or who knows what type of thing at that point.
Yeah, and a lot of my deals have honestly come just from people that knew that I did real estate. So if you talk about it or if you let people know, or if I had a deal done where one of my neighbors called me up and said, "Hey, my mother has a house and her husband passed away. And so she's wanting to sell her house. Do you think you'd be interested?" And I went and looked at it, and like a lot of the houses that we buy, it had some issues. And so we just kind of walked through it and talked about the issues with her. And I said, "Hey, you tell me what the issues are. I don't want to come in and tell you what's wrong with your house. So I'll walk around with you, and you just tell me what's wrong, or what's right, and she did, and it was like, well, is this something? Do you want to fix it, or do you want to hire a contractor to fix it and then list it and try to get as much money as you can for it? And she was like, "No, I have no interest in doing that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, you'd probably have a hard time listing it in its current condition." And she agreed. She said, "Oh, I know." And so I said, "Well, what do you think your house is worth?" And she goes, "Well, I think it's worth this much." And I said, "Okay, well, based on everything that you've told me that's wrong with it, here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how much this costs." Mm-hmm. And we just took a yellow pad and sat down at the table and listed out everything. And I said, "Well, your roof costs this much, and your HVAC costs this much, and your floor, it costs this much. And can we agree on all those?" And it was like, "Yeah, that sounds very reasonable." I said, "Well, let's add them up." So we added them all up, and I said, "Okay, so you want this much for your house, and then it's going to cost this much to fix it. Would it be fair that, maybe I could make a little something on it?" And it was like, "Yeah." So we came up with a price and wrote it down on a legal pad, and I said, "Does that number look good to you or look fair to you?" And she goes, "I like it." So, it was done, and it took probably, 20 minutes, but, I wasn't trying to hard sell the lady. And if she would have said, no, I don't really think that that's a fair amount, or I wanted more for it. The deal may not have worked, and we'd have probably shook hands, and that would have been that. But that's generally my approach with most things.
Learning how to walk away from a deal is something we've learned early on, which I was appreciative of, because it's easy to just think like you've got to get every deal in that sense. And we talked about knowing your numbers, knowing what's works, what's not going to work as far as and trying to levy that risk. I mean, I don't want to take a huge risk in that sense, but I know what we know things cost. Learning to figure out what things cost is a vital asset as far as our numbers that we've thankfully learned. We went into both of our first, I don't think you know the story, but we went from 0 to 6 in 4 days.
Nice.
Units.
Yeah.
With 3 duplexes from 2 different owners that all sit next to each other. It's a crazy story, but one of them had not been updated and so forth. But we spent all the summer just like doing it ourselves, and there was such value. Like I will never trade for anything of like getting in there and doing most of the work ourselves, learning the cost of things and the time it takes for things, and so that has really served us in the long run. As far as, especially now, we just closed on to that point. Kind of what you're saying as far as a lot of times the real estate investors, we can be a valuable asset for somebody who doesn't have the time or money or whatever energy to want to put into making the house listing worthy, not worthy, but you know what I'm saying, in that sense. And so it's easier sometimes for somebody like us to come in and say, hey, we're willing to take on that risk, that headache, that time and money and energy that it'll take to do that. And that's what we kind of found this week. So last week we closed on, like I was talking earlier, 4-bed, 2.5 bath. But there was probably like 20 projects that had been started but not finished. Yeah. So the house was not. It was far from being able to be listed on anything, and so somebody brought it to us, and we were like, yeah, we took our numbers, ran it through, everything, figured out the value, and they agreed to it, and simple as that.
My favorite house, and the house we're always looking on, the white whale, if you will, is the ugly. It's the ugliest house in the best neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're in a good neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we like, good neighborhoods, and I try to find the ugly house in it. And sometimes the ugly house means that it's up for foreclosure. Somebody's lost it,
sure.
And it's going to master commissioner. Sometimes you look for the ugly yards and the ugly landscaping and the ugly paint, and a lot of that stuff, if you know how to do it, or if you have time, you can do it yourself, or you can have somebody come in and do it. Paint's not expensive, but it makes a world of difference. Drywall's not expensive, but it makes a world of difference. Yeah. Flooring.
Did you do the first one yourself?
Oh yeah, probably did the first, dozen or so, and I still do some projects.
Sure.
Myself, just because I can and I enjoy it, but I don't try to do everything myself anymore. It's just too much.
I can imagine. Wrapping up here as far as Kentucky, I'm obviously not a native, but I feel like you pretty much call yourself a native Kentuckian in that sense right now. If somebody's, I got a lot of clients that are moving to the area or people that visit the area, et cetera. What's some of your favorite things about, as a family that you all do with Kentucky?
We love the topography. We love the weather, all 4 seasons. Yeah. We love the lakes, so we're down on Cumberland quite a bit, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I love how central Kentucky is. 3 hours in any direction,
right.
You're in another state.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you want to go north or south, there's a lot of sporting events. We don't have any professional sports, so to speak, but we have a basketball team that sells more tickets than any NBA team, right? And then our football team, it's what it is. And so we enjoy that. And it's a great place to raise a family. It's stable economically.
And I was talking to somebody earlier this week as far as I love this period of time, like the start of football, college football kickoff weekend through December. It's just a giant, as someone put it earlier, I was talking to today, a giant social season. Right. It's not like it's just the holiday season. It's a giant social season of just football with October festivities with Keeneland and with the holidays. So I love this time of year for sure in that sense. Obviously, I leave Chick-fil-A off the table, but you're not going on date nights. I don't think Chick-fil-A, unless it's required for work purposes or getting something done. But where you are going as far as local places, if it's a date night, as far as some of your favorites?
Giuseppe's is nice. We like going there on Nicholasville or just off Nicholasville Road. That's a great little place. Live music sometimes.
I've never been there. I don't know why.
I don't know why you haven't been there.
Well,
it's pretty nice.
I like Italian, but Italian's usually more lower on my list of food groups.
All right. Well, Jeff Ruby's is pretty good downtown. If you want to drop some coin and try to impress your wife.
I need some more rentals before I go there.
Yeah, that one's a special event type place. For us. But then, we try to find, these little hole in the wall, type one-off stuff. We went to a little Nicaraguan restaurant not too long ago, and golly, the name is escaping me, and that's sad because.
Where was it, at least?
Oh, it's up on the north side, but.
Okay.
But I mean, honestly, and this is just me being completely honest, COVID and the pandemic has demolished the restaurant industry and business, and I don't think I've gone to eat at a restaurant in the last year that I would say was a great experience. And
there's a lot of grace having to be given for restaurants at this point.
Oh my goodness, the restaurant business took it on the chin. Coming out of COVID, kitchens are just a mess.
Even last weekend, we were coming back from Nashville and went to eat at a restaurant. I think it was E-Town. On the way back and, walk up to the door, and it used to happen a lot more often. It doesn't happen, and you start to open the door and you realize, the lobby's locked. It's just drive-through only type of thing. Right. And you're like, oh, crap, this is still happening. So
Yeah. I mean, all the way to the national players like Starbucks. I mean, for a while there, I never knew if the one I go to was going to be open or not.
Yeah.
They were doing rolling blackouts so that they could move their staff around to just keep some of them open. And they just didn't have enough staff.
So you don't know this, but our youngest child, he was born March 12th, the day before everything shut down, March 13th. Yeah, nice. So we were in the hospital while I was real excited watching. You're going to watch UK play in the SEC tournament. Mm-hmm. They played the first day of the SEC tournament. My son's born that morning. Mm-hmm. Tournament's canceled. Everything's canceled. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom took the kids to eat at Chick-fil-A on the way to come visit because they could still come visit even at that point for a few more days. They were allowed to. And they played in the playground and everything like that. And I remember thinking for a year or more, I was like, my youngest child's never going to get to play in a Chick-fil-A playground. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's never going to happen again. Yeah. Obviously, they're back open, and I know as soon as they were, it was I don't know, it was a little bit of a moment for me. I was like, I didn't think this would ever happen again, type of a thing in that sense. So
and as a chain, we're moving away from them, right? So I don't think we've built a restaurant that had one in a long time, and so the only ones that exist anymore are the ones that were built years ago that didn't get taken out. Yeah. So, but you're right. I mean, it's fundamentally just changed some of the things, and so we'll see where it goes.
First car you owned?
A 1982 Mazda RX-7.
Okay.
I bought it in probably 89, so it was used. My dad took me down to the little corner lot and thought I was going to buy a four-door Buick. I don't know why he thought at 16 years old I was going to buy a four-door Buick, but he thought it'd be more practical with taking my brother and sister to school and running errands for me to own a four-door Buick. And my mom advocated for me and made it okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I bought a 1982 RX-7.
There you go.
In Billings, Montana.
Okay,
so,
really?
Yeah, so, it's a great snow car, right?
Right.
I mean, it weighs probably 1,100 pounds, and you got 3 feet of snow, and you have to plug it in every night, to start it the next day. So maybe not the best choice of vehicle for me, but I had a ton of fun in that car. Yeah, it was awesome.
Nice. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show. Make sure everybody subscribe. Check us back next week for another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth Studio. And again, Roderick, thanks for coming on the show.
Yep, thank you very much.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.